Hey, Jeff, are you there? I'm sorry, I don't know what that was. It just cut. But you were saying fudge on top of fudge. It's like what's the point?
This is We Bleed Orange and Black, the podcast for Halloween and horror lovers. Join us as we interview creators, discuss our favorite horrors, and share original spooky stories. I'm Jeff C. Carter, and this week we're talking with Patrick Tumblety. Patrick Tumblety is a writer of horror, science fiction, and poetry. He is also a multimedia artist with work appearing in audio, photography, film, and television. He lives in Delaware with his wife, Kathleen, and their cat, Dusty. Dusty is going strong. Welcome to the show, Patrick.
Thank you so much.
Tell us, where'd you come up? How'd you get started?
I grew up in New Jersey and went to college in Philadelphia. Actually went for film and television at the University of the Arts. After that, I went solely into multimedia, but my real love was writing. So I quickly got sick of traveling for multimedia and kind of battened down and started to write as much as I could. And since about 2011, 2012, I've been publishing as much as I can every year. I completed my first novel that I'm trying to get representation for, and I have about 24 or so short stories out in markets around the world.
What got you into horror?
I would say my dad. I was watching horror movies way too early, probably much earlier than I should be. I just loved it. Loved it from the start. It was always the most meaningful, interesting genre for me. So when I started to read really heavily, I think the first book I ever read was Jurassic Park because I love the movie so much. And for those who've read the book, it's actually more horror than it is adventure. And that kind of was a gateway into saying, like, no, this is what I want to write too, because the more horror aspects of that book really resonated with me. And then it was just one after the other. I started getting into the classics and, Richard Matheson, Ray Bradbury, Stephen King. And after that, the rest was history.
It is my conviction that early inappropriate exposure to horror is what really leaves a stain on your soul and makes you a diehard horror fan for life.
Well, I think like any early childhood drama, it leaves a stain. I think that really getting scared at such a young age has its, obviously it benefits, but also, it is trauma. Sometimes you're going to bed and you're scared of Chucky under your bed, even though you know that it's not real.
If you're young enough, you're not sure it's not real.
Yeah, I remember being the same age, not knowing if Santa Claus was real or not, and then also not knowing if the thing in my closet was real or not, because when you're a kid, you believe in magic because you're told magic exists. So why doesn't anything else exist? That's the stuff that really gets you. Luckily, I had parents who were very knowledgeable to tell me, like, okay, this is why it's fake. This is how they do it. This is how they make it. And so I kind of do that with my own daughter, where, she would get scared. Like she got scared of Nightmare Before Christmas, which of course I had to show her. She's 6 and she didn't quite understand why it looked different than other cartoons. So I showed her the making of, and she's like, oh, they're just toys that they move around. I'm like, yeah. And so she stopped becoming afraid of it. She started to love it. Like, oh, that looks like something physical and solid I can touch, because it is. And as a kid, you kind of connect with that a little bit more and not really know why. I think that's why I was always afraid of Chucky as a kid, because I had Teddy Ruxpin, whose mouth actually moved.
My teddy's name is Teddy Ruxpin. He talks, he tells stories.
Hi, my name is Teddy Ruxpin. Can you and I be friends?
Yeah.
And it's like, so when you're watching Chucky live, on the movie, and you see his mouth move, and you're like, okay, that wasn't cartoon. Like, how did they do that? And when you're a kid, it's hard to separate.
Animatronics and puppets for the win.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Want to play?
I have read somewhere that you have a particular philosophy regarding horror. You believe that horror does not exist solely to be horrifying.
I think it's an interesting topic. For me, horror is a blanket term for a lot of other subgenres. And I think that you need to always qualify when you're talking to a horror fan about the kind of horror that you're talking about. Because tragedy is horror, but tragedy doesn't have to be solely in a horror story. A thriller is a thriller, but it can be in a horror story. Science fiction can be in a horror story depending on how you use it. Horror is a blanket term. And I don't think horror just has to be there for horror's sake. Horror is a genre like anything else. A comedy can also be serious. It can be funny, but sometimes funny helps us deal with the serious. Sometimes I think you could have a horror story, but going through horror is different than being just horror for horror's sake. When you look at something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the movie, the original, to me, that's not just a horror movie, that's a tragedy. You know, you get one person living, you know, by the skin of their teeth, and that's kind of it. You know, it's about these victimized kids. But then you have something like Scream. That's almost a comedy. It's kind of like a meta commentary on a society that takes in this horror. Then you have something like The Babadook, that is kind of it's a horror story, but that's actually a meditation on overcoming trauma and dealing with it. There are horror movies that have happy endings, but you still call them horror because you're scared to death throughout the entire thing.
The primary color is horror.
Yeah, the primary color is horror, but I don't always believe that the outcome or the point of it needs to always be horror. And I think that everybody goes through their own private trauma and their own private horror, but because we go through these things, sometimes we come out better. And the horror is just another aspect of life. That's why I sometimes will always call my writing survival horror. So yeah, so it doesn't always have to be just horror to be scary. It can be horror to be transformative.
I agree. I don't believe that making something purely bleak elevates it. To me, that sort of flattens it and removes texture. It's just one note. I was talking with a friend of mine the other day about certain horror movies that feel mean-spirited. They want to aggressively shock the audience and also torment their characters, but offer no catharsis or survival or character transformation at the end. I was enjoying the movie Smile, but I thought the ending was a real letdown.
The second you started saying that, Smile was the first movie that came to mind, actually. The ending is a complete letdown. Yeah,
I thought the ending was a letdown, and I thought they chose horror over story and character and audience satisfaction. And I feel like the people I saw the movie with loved it. They just lapped it up because they just wanted horror upon horror upon horror. The more mean-spirited, the better. And I thought it really did a disservice to the emotional journey we were on with that character.
100%. And because of that, it does not feel like a complete narrative arc. Is that they've laid so much interesting groundwork and almost this strange hero's journey for our main character. And then they forgot to write an ending.
I would say that they had an ending and then they betrayed that ending. It was a false ending, a false character arc, a false redemption because they pulled the rug out at the end. That's something that always bothered me about the original Nightmare on Elm Street, was that they face up to Freddy and they defeat him in his own game. And then at the end, it turns out it was all a dream and Freddy's arm reaches in and pulls their mother through the door. It always kind of bothered me. I was like, no, they defeated Freddy. Why does he get them at the end?
Well, it's interesting that you say that. Wes Craven didn't want that ending. He wanted Nancy to overcome her fears, get him out of her subconscious, and ride off into the sunset. The Weinsteins made him put that ending on. In fact, they rushed it to the first showing of that to executives because that's the one they wanted. Craven does not care about just leaving it like that. He loves heroes' journeys. That's one of the reasons why I think Scream is so popular, especially with the core characters, because that's more of a murder mystery where we are going along with the trauma of the survivor. You know, you see people now talking about the new one that Neve Campbell isn't in. And they're like, well, she is Scream. Because Neve Campbell, Sidney Prescott, her character, is the hero of that tale. Wes Craven always wrote his characters that way. He wanted a hero's journey through horror, not just a setup for a sequel. So he felt really betrayed after that first one because they demanded that.
That totally makes sense as a studio note. Missing the point and chasing the label that's on the box. Well, it's a horror, so it must be horror throughout.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think a lot of fans want that. Maybe it's just the fact that I'm older now or that I care about story, but I like to see some arc, some nuance, some redemption, some resolution. Obviously, tragedy is one of the two masks of the theater for a reason. It rings true. It informs us about our life. It is cathartic to watch a tragic story unfold, but usually we learn from the flaws of those characters that make it the best kind of tragedy.
Growing up, even in the 80s slasher genre, always had a final girl or a final guy. There was always a triumph at the end of these movies. Regardless of how bleak or bloody they are, there was always a girl kicking Freddy's butt at the end of a movie. There was always that one final blow to the killer. That kind of stuck with me at a younger age. And I'm like, there's always heroes. So when I'm looking for horror, that's what I want. I want to see something that kind of throws you out of left field. I think the movie Smile would have been more interesting if she figured out a way out of it.
Could have had both, where the character faces her past and confronts her trauma and her guilt over her role in her mother's death, and then is released from the curse. That doesn't mean that you can't have more Smile movies or that the demon is destroyed. The demon can go off and keep doing its thing.
They could have easily done both. One of the things that always comes to mind is, and I'm not saying this is a great movie, but one of my favorites is Wishmaster. Did you ever watch Wishmaster?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's produced by Craven, right? One of my favorite endings, actually, one of my favorite villain endings, because she just, with her cunning alone, she stops the villain. But the way that it's stopped leaves it open for a sequel. And it's like, oh, you had your cake and ate it too. That's great.
It's the Hellraiser ending. That's what you want.
Yeah, exactly. We put the genie back in a bottle, but the bottle's still there.
Or the Wishmaster back in the bottle. That's somewhere.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
That which is eternal cannot die. But if it's any consolation, sweet Alex, that hurt like hell.
Every year or so, you like to put out a special multimedia project called The October Children. I was fortunate enough to participate in last year's offering.
Dr. Olson, DDS, stands on his porch with a plastic pumpkin brimming with treats. Parents are often surprised that the local dentist does not hand out miniature toothbrushes, but he never saw the fun in that.
Every once in a while, I'll get a friend of mine just emailed me, a close friend of mine from California. She was like, give my kudos to whoever wrote The Dentist.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, my friend just got to the episode and he's like, yeah. So I was like, I had to tell you that.
Fantastic. That makes me feel great. Hopefully they're not thinking of that as they head into the dentist's office.
He is a dentist.
He is a dentist.
He's a dentist. Yeah, he's my best friend. He reads all of my stuff, and I told him to read that, and he loved it. So yeah, he's like, it's absolutely true.
How did this project come about?
It came about because I was doing a lot of writing, and I was getting a lot published, and I was happy, but I missed the multimedia end of things. And I love audiobooks, podcasts, anything that has storytelling in any sense, with graphic novels. I like using all of the other senses as well. So even though writing is my first love, any way to translate a story, I feel like is just icing on the cake. And I really miss being in multimedia. I missed editing a lot. Editing was I would say if writing is my first love, editing is my second. And because I love doing sound design and things like that, and I missed it so much from not doing it for a while, I decided to take these smaller stories, a couple of my poetry pieces, all the stuff that kind of centered around Halloween and autumn, and kind of make a little audio play out of them. And it was a way for me to kind of express my writing that way, and also just kind of get into the mood of Halloween. I'm one of those crazy people who just absolutely love the atmosphere. I love everything about the holidays, whether it's Christmas, Halloween, everything. So the more that I can do to create, whether it's art or even just experiences during those times, it just gets me more into it. So in 2019 is the first year I did it. That was the way I partied for Halloween that year.
Halloween is first on the podium. Christmas is a close second. I just love holidays in general.
For me, Halloween and Christmas are on equal footing. I find them to be the yin and yang of my life, at least. In fact, my next tattoo is going to be a jack-o'-lantern with a Christmas cap on because I feel like they go hand in hand. What I love about Halloween and how I felt, especially doing the October Children, was Halloween, it's a perspective that we all share because not everybody has ever been in love. Every single person has been terrified of something.
And everyone loses people and pets and loved ones.
Yeah, death is the great equalizer. Death brings us all together. A lot of people say that, you die alone and it's a lonesome thing, but I disagree. I think death is the one thing that we can all hold together in the dark and be afraid of. And I think that we do, even if it's metaphorically. Taking something that is lonely and terrifying and has kept you as crying in the dark as a child and handing it to the next person and say, let's laugh at this because we both share this. And I think that's the beauty of Halloween. Let's just eat something sweet and get past it.
Well said. I'm there 100% with you. I heard a rumor that you were working on a coffee table book.
It's still in the wings. I actually got a few pages back. I'm working with an artist, Drew Roche, who's a great comic book artist. We're working on basically turning a lot of the pieces from the October Children into an illustrated coffee book. One of the Halloween, for me personally, is really visual. You can write to your heart's content, but seeing a jack-o'-lantern under a porch light is its own story. So knowing that I wanted to publish these stories as text, I feel like it wasn't going to do them justice without accompanied by some sort of fun visual. And so we're kind of going for a comic art style, something very goosebumpsy, because to me, that's the best part of Halloween material is that, the whimsy of the macabre and kind of that juxtaposition of something, silly and over the top with something serious that you're talking about.
Let's drill down into your story. Every kid should have a Boo Radley. Would you be up to read the intro to the story?
Absolutely. I told the kids not to knock on the house on Sullivan Street, even if its lights are on. I heard things about the people living in that house. I know I'm being a little paranoid, but I like to be cautious, especially tonight of all nights. I'm sure none of it's actually true, but every town has that one house. The one that dog walkers try not to look at as they hurry by. The one that gives the mailman pause when he sorts the letters and sees the address. Kids tell stories about that house to frighten their friends and then challenged him to ring its doorbell on a triple dog dare. It's healthy for kids to have a little mystery in their lives anyway. It adds character. That's what Halloween's all about. Scares and candy, tricks and treats. They'll get some fun memories out of it and then they'll get older. Every kid should have a Boo Radley. Mine was Mr. Felix.
Awesome. So what inspired this story?
What inspired the story was the idea that every kid should have mystery in their lives. Because I think believing in something greater than yourself or in any kind of magic is healthier than not having any.
So now that you have a little goblin of your own, are they at the trick-or-treating age?
Oh, yeah. She's 6. She's been trick-or-treating since she was 3.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. No, like I said, I tried to instill all the fun stuff into her as early as possible.
How's the scene out there, Halloween in Delaware?
Where we're at, it's actually really nice. So growing up in Jersey, I would say like the first 10 years of trick-or-treating for me as a kid, there was hundreds of kids. It was like every Halloween movie where you see kids like just in droves. That's what it was like. But as that generation got older, it started to just diminish. Here, though, in Delaware, we moved into a district that has a new school. It actually has a new elementary, middle, and high school all in one complex. So there are hundreds of kids. Each year, I kind of get that feeling again of like handing out candy because it's just constant kids. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to have like grown up and now with my own kid, letting her have that experience as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of kids here, which is really cool. It's awesome. I like to dress up and hand out candy and try to scare as many kids as possible because I've just been loving scaring kids and handing out candy and just meeting the neighbors and talking to people.
As it should be. What part of Delaware are you in?
I am in Middletown, Delaware, about 20 minutes from Wilmington.
My family has been summering at Bethany Beach since time immemorial.
Yeah, Bethany's great.
Going up to Rehoboth, going down to Fenwick, doing Ocean City.
Yeah, Ocean City is actually my favorite place in the world.
Oh, yeah. big creaky boardwalk with
Yep.
t-shirt shops and Thrasher's French fries and Ferris wheels.
I will tell you that if, knock on wood, my novel career takes off, there will be more stories set in an Ocean City-like environment than anything else. It's where I went as a kid, for vacations. And it's just been one of the biggest inspirations going there and writing. And I would take a notebook to the beach and write as a kid. And I don't know, it holds a special place. So we try to get down there at least once a summer, like even if it's just for a week.
So if you had to choose Jersey Devil or Pukwudgie?
Jersey Devil. I grew up so close to the Pine Barrens.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so much you've heard. I mean, there was an X-Files episode about it. Just by default, I got to go for the Jersey Devil.
For those who may not know, a Pukwudgie is a creature from Wampanoag folklore, and they live in Delaware, and they are 2-foot-tall goblins with porcupine spikes, and they do not like people, and they will stab you with little spears and shoot you with poison arrows. Have you encountered any Pukwudgies in your travels?
Not yet, but what I love about that legend is that unlike the Jersey Devil, like the Jersey Devil lives in the Pine Barrens, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all that really is geographically relevant. Whereas Pukwudgie is like, they'll be like, oh, they live on the bridge up on North there. Like, there's been specific, so you know what I mean, like specific sightings about them, and I'm like, oh, well, at least they got their territory. That's cool. Like people I found, especially researching the area and like getting all those, like those regional ghost story books,
Mm-hmm.
is that, the cryptids here almost have pride for their Delaware state. They stick to their own regions, and like there's almost like an economy of sightings, and it's pretty funny. I kind of like it.
It's not like some Sasquatch that could be anywhere and everywhere and is hardly specific. I like the fact that it's ultra local, locals only.
Yeah, it's very local. Like all of the folklore here is very much from, this specific road in Delaware or this specific corner. It's not just regional or like a forest area, which I think is like really interesting, really cool. It kind of like adds to the mythos.
Growing up in Connecticut, we had giant wolf spiders all around our house because our house was surrounded by trees. And I've spent many hours on record talking about my experiences with the giant wolf spiders. Whereas in Delaware, sometimes we'd encounter giant biting horseflies or mosquitoes from the swamplands, but we never really had to worry too much about spiders. It was a couple years ago that I was back in Delaware, and I noticed that over the intervening decades, the tree line had moved to the dunes, and the beach grass had sort of moved up from the beach to commingle with the tree line. And I was suddenly seeing this explosion of huge golden orb weaver spiders, and they were everywhere. They were all over the house. And for those who haven't seen a golden orb weaver spider, they're also known as banana spiders because they look like little bananas. They're these giant, gnarly yellow spiders that cast huge webs. Have you had any experiences where you are?
Yes. So I have a terrible fear of spiders. And in Delaware, it's just no exception. Like orb weavers, I've seen wolf spiders. Here's the thing. I've gone through an enemy of my enemy is my friend situation these last couple summers because as you said, the mosquito, the hornets, the wasps, now the lanternflies, the misplanted Asian lanternfly that's actually going all over the state now. They've become such a problem that it's hard to stand outside in the summer and not get whacked in the face by like a baseball-sized hornet. They've become rampant in Delaware, and those spiders are the only things keeping them away. So as much as I hate spiders, they at least leave you alone and kill the things that are actually flying into you. So we kind of have a truce right now with me and the spiders because of that problem. And so I try not to kill them or anything, especially because the wasps are killing the bees, and we're having a lot of bee problems, meaning bees going extinct.
Mm-hmm.
That spiders right now are just really good for the environment and keeping those kind of invasive species at bay. So we have to like our armistice, like we have to be like, all right, you live here, I live here, let's leave each other alone.
You've heard it here first, people. Patrick Tumblety says, more spiders.
No. I just said leave them alone.
So what was your best or worst Halloween memory?
Ooh, the best. I would say growing up, my first girlfriend, Tammy, and my best friends all going out on like a double date on Halloween. You know, for kids, that was the date. And just staying up to like 4 a.m. and eating candy. And it was the first time I was in love. And we just stayed up all night and watched horror movies. And it was like the most wonderful thing ever.
That sounds glorious.
Yeah, there's nothing like snuggling your first girlfriend while watching Nightmare on Elm Street on Halloween night, man.
We'll end with a light one. Best and worst candy.
Best candy, Reese's, always. In fact, holiday Reese's are the best because you get more for your buck. Whether it's the pumpkin-shaped ones or the Christmas tree ones, holiday Reese's.
Or?
Oh, the Easter egg, of course.
The Easter egg.
Yeah, they're all good because you get more of the middle.
Right now, we actually have the heart-shaped Valentine's Day Reese's and the egg-shaped Easter Reese's.
You're right. They're both on the shelves too. Like, cause that's a good point.
This is the confluence where the two worlds are overlapped, and you can get both egg-shaped and heart-shaped Reese's.
Well, my daughter still has a bag of candy from Halloween that she doesn't let me touch, so I could just sneak a Halloween one in too. So it's like party all year round.
Yeah. I agree. The holiday Reese's, just like the Santa Cokes, are better than your average Coke.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Just a drop of Santa's precious blood.
Yeah. It's an extra Santa sense inside of it. Yep. But worst? I mean, are any candies bad?
Yes, Necco wafers.
Oh yeah, never mind. Necco. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a good point. Actually, you know what I was going to say? The dots. Do you ever have dots? So you get them on that long piece of paper.
You mean you get that long CVS receipt and there's bits of sugary plastic stuck to it?
Yeah, and you can never eat it without getting a little piece of the paper on it.
Love it. Not gonna lie.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
Love the dots.
You monster.
Maybe it was more of an activity than a snack. But
yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's more of an activity than a snack.
But, you know, like a wax bottle or something, there's just some fucked up candies that I enjoy.
Oh yeah.
Where can our listeners find out more?
I'm mostly active on my Twitter. Friend me on Twitter. I like just interacting with people on a daily basis there. For a project, check out my website. I post everything there.
I'll include links to both in the show notes. Patrick, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I had a blast.
Subscribe and follow the show. Links are in the show notes. You can find Ryan at 20th Century RG with the number 20 on YouTube. And you can find me at jeffccarter.com. Hit the link to pick up my collection, We Bleed Orange and Black. 31 fun-sized tales for Halloween. Until next time, stay spooktacular.
Yeah, I don't know why that keeps happening to me. I got like a whole new router and everything.
It's the Pukwudgies. They're mad that you went with the Jersey Devil.
They're right outside the door. They heard me say it.